voting is well underway in the United States presidential elections. Today arrives on the end of intense and combative campaigns between Republican nominee former President Donald Trump and Democrat nominee Vice-President Kamala Harris. All eyes will eventually turn to the coveted swing states, where the final determinations will be made. SABC News Correspondent Mitch McCann joins us now from Michigan. Mitch, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. With Michigan being one of the 7 swing states to watch, experts believe Kamala Harris and Donald Trump both have a pretty realistic chance of winning. What has election turnout looked like?
Well, nice to be with you from the battleground state of Michigan. Our turnout, to answer your question, has been very, very good. In fact, 3.3 million people had already early voted here before Election Day started at 7 o'clock this morning. And that represents around 45% of registered voters. So far, it is an excellent turnout here in the state of Michigan. Now, in 2020, for history, Joe Biden won this state by around 154,000 votes. That was considered close at the time, only around 3% he won by, but it was even closer in 2016. Donald Trump won this state by around 11,000 votes and became the first Republican to win here in Michigan since 1988. And as you say, the polls are very close here. The New York Times, for instance, has Kamala Harris leading, but by less than 1%, so well within the margin of error. So yes, as the experts say, it could go either way tonight.
Michigan, we know that Kamala Harris pledged to do everything in her power to end the war in Gaza, a commitment which resonated with the large Arab American and Muslim American population. What has their stance been on Gaza?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we are in Dearborn, Michigan, just outside Detroit at the moment. This is the first Arab-majority city in the United States, and there are more than 200,000 registered voters in Michigan who identify as Arab Americans, so that is from the Middle East or they have North African roots. And I've spoken to many communities here since we first came in September, and there is a feeling of sadness, anguish from a lot of communities here because they have loved ones in the Middle East dealing with this situation, and there is a lot of unhappiness and in some cases fury aimed at the Biden administration and how they are siding with Israel or how they are supplying Israel with weapons for the war in Gaza. So many people here are trying to decide whether they support the current administration, hoping they'll change course, hoping Kamala Harris will end that war in Gaza, or whether or not they turn to Donald Trump. And it's interesting to note, Donald Trump has spent a lot of time here in the last couple of months, even in the last couple of days, trying to convince voters he is the person that can end the war. So there is really conflicting views among some in the community here. But there are also people here in this Arab American majority community that are concerned about the economy. And the economy is the biggest issue in the election. 81% of Americans, according to Pew Research, view the economy as a top issue. But yes, the Arab American community here really is considering the war in Gaza as they vote today.
Mention of the New York Times and that 1% margin that Kamala Harris has is what, if one had to look at the trends since Kamala Harris joined the race, what would you say are some of the notable differences as we look between the states?
Yeah, that's right. Well, look, Kamala Harris no doubt has closed the gap between Donald Trump and where Joe Biden was. Joe Biden was trailing in nearly all swing states, including here in Michigan when he was still in the race. But she has really closed the gap. And so if we look at the swing states around the country, they are all essentially within the margin of error at this stage. And there's even discussion that the state of Iowa might be in play as well, although most people believed until a couple of days ago, until a new poll came out, that Iowa would go for the Republicans. So really, every battleground state is closed. The national polls have Kamala Harris at about 49%, Donald Trump around 48%. It's incredibly close. So it's just going to be so interesting tonight to see which way it does go. But it's also important to note that some of the big states, like Pennsylvania, another battleground state that has 19 electoral college votes available tonight, the biggest prize from the swing states, that could be tomorrow or the next day or a couple of days before we find out the final result there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that state goes, but also here in Michigan, of course.
Mitch McCann, thank you very much. Of course, let's leave it there for now.